Good morning, everyone. The reflection today is on Luke 10, verses 38 to 42. I think it's useful just to orientate ourselves in the book for a moment. So in the first part of Luke, Luke tells us about who Jesus is and what his vision is for the kingdom of heaven. And then in the last part of Luke, Luke tells us about Jesus' death and resurrection. And there's this middle section where Jesus is sort of on the journey to Jerusalem with his followers, mostly his disciples. And as he goes, he teaches the disciples about what it means to follow him. And so I think that's just a useful place to be. And in this chapter, I think I'm just going to mention one thing else that's in this chapter. In a very specific way, he tells the disciples he sends out 72 disciples ahead of him, and he talks about how they should behave. He talks about, when they enter a village and they enter a house, if that house welcomes them in, they should bring peace upon it and remain there and do acts of service and healing there. But if they're not welcomed, they should, they should shake the dust off their feet, and God will be condemning of that town. And the reason I tell you that is because I think the verse today is Jesus walking that walk. So he's just told the disciples, this is what you should go out and do. And then at the end of this chapter, we hear this story about him being welcomed into a house and his interactions with the two women who own the house and welcome him in. So I'm just going to quickly read the passage because I don't think it's too long. Now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her." Now, some of you might, the more astute among you might have noticed that this reflection is coming a day late, which I think is quite ironic given the verse that we're reading today, because clearly I was distracted by the many things in my life and therefore was not sitting and listening to Jesus' teaching yesterday. So forgive me for this reflection being late. But I think this passage kind of calls upon some of the themes that run through Jesus' teaching in this book. I actually think that Jesus' teaching in this book is almost like a tapestry, and each story has echoes of many other stories. So like last week, I was speaking about the parable of the rich fool who oriented his life on treasure and not on Jesus. And I think that it's not quite the same, but there are echoes in here. Because clearly, Mary is very solidly orienting her attention on Jesus and his teachings. Whereas Martha is orienting her attention on serving Jesus. And it's not to say that, serving Jesus is not worth doing. But the thing that I find quite funny is that, like Jesus and God, they don't need our service. Like without Martha running around bringing Jesus food, like he would still achieve his goals, being on earth and the salvation of humanity, even without her attentions. So her intentions are good, but she's missing out on the point. She's focusing on serving him and then missing him. And I think that actually Jesus said, yet another echo. I think earlier on in the chapter, Jesus sort of tells the disciples and expresses just what Martha is missing out on and what Mary is recognizing. He says to the disciples, "Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you that many prophets and kings desired to see what you see and did not see it, and hear what you hear and did not hear it." So, Jesus was foretold, and now he's here, and that's so precious. And Martha is missing that by serving him. She's missing him. And so whereas Mary is, you know, is like there, she's understood the precious treasure that Jesus' presence is, and is listening and learning from him. And so I pray that before we try to serve Jesus today, we would listen to him first and, you know, go out and do his work after. Have a good day, everyone.